So at this moment in time, you are under arrest.
Excuse me?
You're under arrest for the neglect of a child, okay? You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention
You're arresting me.
something which you later rely on in court.
No.
Anything you do say may be given evidence.
No, you can't arrest me.
Jack,
What about
Jack, in the car.
Mate, please don't. Look, please don't make me do
Jack, easy. What I have to do at this moment in time is I have to arrest you on suspicion of child neglect, okay? Just listen to me. So you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you don't mention one question, some later on in court, and if you do say may be given evidence.
This is the moment that 35-year-old Jack Benham and 27-year-old Sian Hedges were arrested on suspicion of neglect of a child following the death of Sian Hedges' son, Alfie Phillips, who was 18 months old. Alfie had been found dead with 70 injuries, including fractures to his bones and human bite marks on his back, as well as traces of cocaine in his bloodstream. What followed was both Benham and Hedges being charged with murder, standing trial at Maidstone Crown Court, and being found guilty. Both of them received life sentences, with Benham being given a minimum term of 23 years, and Hedges, Alfie's mother, being given a minimum term of 19 years. In this video, I'm briefly going to explain the facts of this case and then go through the judge's sentencing remarks to explain how he came to the sentence that he did. At the time of the murder in 2020, 18-month-old Alfie Phillips lived with his mother Sian Hedges and her boyfriend Jack Benham in a caravan. Now, both of them were regular drinkers and drug users, taking cocaine in and around Alfie inside the caravan. On the evening of the 27th of November into the 28th of November 2020, Hedges and Benham had been drinking whiskey and taking cocaine, with Hedges having gone to buy drugs from a friend and to repay a £400 debt, as well as getting mixers and drinks for an evening together in the caravan. That night, Alfie woke up crying, and this angered the couple and triggered a frenzied attack which left the 18-month-old unresponsive as Hedges and Benham went back to sleep. The following morning, Alfie was found unresponsive. Now, Jack Benham sought help from his mother, who tried in vain to resuscitate Alfie, but he was already dead. Alfie died with injuries including fractures to his ribs, arms and legs, signs of smothering to his lips and mouth, and traces of cocaine in his body. After being originally arrested for neglect of a child, the couple were charged with Alfie's murder on the basis that he had so many injuries that the death was clearly not an accident. Now, both of them stood trial at Maidstone Crown Court. Originally, they argued that Alfie's death was as a result of some sort of tragic accident, but when medical evidence put forward by the prosecution showed this not to be credible, both Hedges and Benham turned on each other, blaming each other for the death of Alfie. Now, to prove a charge of murder against both of them, the prosecution had to prove that they unlawfully killed Alfie with the intention to kill him or cause him really serious harm. Now, the prosecution's case in this trial was not that the couple intended to kill Alfie, but they had intended to cause him really serious harm by inflicting the injuries that they did in that frenzied attack when he woke them. And this is an important distinction which I will explain when it comes to the judge's sentencing remarks. And on the 30th of November 2023, both Sian Hedges and Jack Benham were found guilty of the murder of Alfie Phillips. When it came to sentencing, the judge was mandated to pass a life sentence for both of them, so the only question was how long the minimum term would be. Now, Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020 sets out the considerations for a judge when it comes to determining the starting point for the minimum term. Exceptional cases, such as ones involving multiple murders, will attract what's known as a whole life order, where an individual will never be released from prison. Cases for things involving things like firearms ordinarily would attract a starting point of 30 years. In this case, and I'll put a link in the description to the judge's sentencing remarks so that you can read them in full if you wish, the judge determined that the appropriate starting point was 15 years, as although he found that the individual's actions were cruel and brutal towards Alfie, this was not a case in which the injuries were inflicted for sexual or sadistic reasons, and there was no other reason why a higher starting point would apply. Now, the judge increased each of the sentences due to the aggravating factors in the case, specifically that the victim, Alfie, was a defenceless 18-month-old child who was in their joint care that night. They were the people that should have been protecting him, and the offence was not the result of a single momentary or impulsive act. The assaults involved extreme brutality and resulted in a very large number of injuries. Alfie would have endured a great deal of pain and suffering in the period before he fell into unconsciousness, exacerbated by the shock that the assaults were being carried out or facilitated by his own mother and her boyfriend. The offences were also committed whilst under the influence of drink and drugs, and neither expressed any remorse for their actions and instead sought to blame each other for what had happened to Alfie. In mitigation, the judge stated that the attack was not planned or premeditated, and he accepted that neither of them had intended to kill Alfie. And remember, I said a moment ago that the offence of murder is where someone intends to kill or cause really serious harm. If the judge in this case had found that they did intend to kill Alfie, there would have been a further uplift in the number of years for the starting point as compared with the intention to cause really serious harm, which in itself still attracted an uplift from the starting point of 15 years. In light of the aggravating and mitigating circumstances in this case, the judge increased the minimum terms from a starting point of 15 years to 19 years for Sian Hedges and 23 years for Jack Benham. As they were awarded life sentences, the minimum term is how long they must spend in prison before they are considered eligible to apply to the parole board. They will need to satisfy the parole board that they are no longer a danger to the public. If they meet that test, then they will be released on licence and subject to a number of conditions for the remainder of their lives. If they're not granted parole at that first hearing, then they will be told when they are eligible to apply for parole again. So in theory, it is possible that neither of them will ever be released. Speaking after the case, Will Bodiam from the Crown Prosecution Service South East said that this is an absolutely tragic case. Alfie was killed by the two people, one of whom was his own mother, who were responsible that night for looking after him and protecting him. Instead, they subjected him to a series of assaults during the course of that fateful night, leaving him with devastating injuries that he could not survive. That's all for this video. If you do have any comments, then please do drop them down below. And if you'd like to see more from me, then please do subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Take care.